back on Grand Bahama today. I am privileged to have as my guest Leslie Miller. Leslie Miller, for the audience benefit, has been the chairman of the Bahamas Electricity Corporation, and you were once a minister of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So you know a bit about energy. As a matter of fact, you know a lot about energy. What do you think about this situation that has developed between the government and the Port Authority in this particular issue? And then we'll speak about the broader picture of the dispute in terms of fees to be paid to the government by the GBPA.
I think we need to appreciate this new act that the government has brought into force, that all of the islands in the Bahamas would come under the auspices of OICA. Now remember, OICA is a statutory body only to ensure that fairness, that the price of electricity, the price of cable, does not prohibit the average Bahamian from having access to those utilities. I don't see OICA running any utility in Grand Bahama or any place else in the Bahamas. In fact, the opposite has been the case with BEC, for example, BTC. Their job as a regulator is to assess the costs associated with providing the public the access to the television station, access to electricity at a fair cost. The Grand Bahama Port Authority is still going to be responsible for the licensing of anyone coming into Grand Bahama. In fact, the Minister of Trade and Industry, in this case, the Minister of Electricity, would be the one responsible. You know, as government shifts, new ministries come into being with different names for doing the same job as the others. I think we need to wait and see how this pans out with regard to what is actually going to take place in Grand Bahama. There's a lot of work going on in Grand Bahama now. I'm very proud of the fact that they're putting in all of these solar farms in Grand Bahama. I think it's a good thing. The government of New Providence is trying to do likewise, but they haven't initiated anything as yet. But the Port Authority and the new company there is really moving very aggressively towards that end. I just think that both parties need to reach a happy medium on behalf of the Bahamian people. But I don't see OICA as being, no one goes to OICA to get a license to put up anything in this country. OICA is there to regulate and to see to it that the contract is carried out on behalf of the people of the Bahamas.
Yeah,
really
but these energy sources that you speak to so highly, they have happened under the jurisdiction of the GBPA in conjunction with the power company and other sources. So is there a need for the regulatory power to be taken from the GBPA at this time?
I think what is happening now under the Brave Davis administration, they see the Bahamas as being one entity. In other words, Grand Bahama or Freeport itself should not be excluded from things that's going on in Abaco, in Bimini, in Exuma, in Eleuthera, in all of our. In other words, what they want is a template that would accompany all of the players that is going to be supplying. Now, bear in mind too that you've got this existing situation between the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the government now that's going into arbitration. Again, I say that I don't see a problem with OICA, because OICA can't dictate and advise any private entity in Grand Bahama, any place else, what they should do. They are the ones who go and make sure that the operations are to the benefit of the Bahamian people. And I think once we keep it in that context, I don't see a problem really down the road with OICA doing their job, but the government of Bahamas and the minister responsible for energy would be the one on behalf of the cabinet to grant licenses to anyone wanting to put up a electricity plant in any family island. So I think what they're doing is having a new template that all islands in the Bahamas are the same. Now bear in mind that the situation with the Grand Bahama Port Authority, the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, the auspices of that agreement, as far as I'm aware, there's only two other places on this earth that has a similar agreement. That's the Vatican and that's Morocco.
Yeah.
So this is a unique situation that I think is trying to be corrected by the Davis administration to have one template for the entire country. So we have to wait and see how this implementation is going to take place and the benefits to be derived by people. My concern really is the consumers in this country paying a fair price for electricity and not the exorbitant cost that is being dumped on them daily by BPL and the situation in Grand Bahama. People are complaining. So my concern is the average Bahamian being able to afford electricity to supply them with a decent way of life.
And therein lies the main apprehension for Grand Bahamians. There's been a comfort zone knowing that the power company was regulated by an entity right there in Grand Bahama. With a fear for what was going on, people in Grand Bahama fear that too much involvement from the Nassau end of it might result in the power situation going to how things are in Nassau. You know, in Grand Bahama, power goes off for 5 minutes, it's back on. We don't have any issue with absorbent power increases, and people are kind of comfortable to a certain degree as compared to the power situation in New Providence.
But if you look at the history of BPL, it had nothing to do with their inability, that is, BEC and BPL inability to supply the people in New Providence and other family islands with inexpensive, timely, and affordable electricity, and one that doesn't go out every couple of minutes. But mind you, we haven't had no problems for the last, I would say, the last 10, 15 years with outages. I believe the BPL is now preparing for the summer upsurge that's going to happen June, July, August, September. But OICA, again, has nothing to do with the internal running of BPL. Their job is just to see to it that the price structure for the cost of electricity is affordable, that the average Bahamian and the business community could afford it. And right now, they cannot afford it under any circumstances. I heard what the minister said. I heard what the prime minister said. I don't know how they're going to bring these costs down with BC having debt of $500 million and more, really, much more than $500 million. This new company that they're aligning themselves with, how that's going to happen to enable them to bring down the cost of energy. I know BPL is going to be split in 3 phases, again, according to the minister and the prime minister. I think we need to wait and see how this comes together. My concern, again, is that the Bahamian people would be the beneficiaries of whatever decision is made on their behalf, that they should be the ones in Grand Bahama and every other island in this country to benefit. I'm proud of the fact that in Grand Bahama, the Grand Bahama Electric Company has done a wonderful job. They've gotten new equipment, but that's progress. That's when the private sector does what they need to do. When you get the government involved, like they are with BPL, a lot of things should have been done with BPL. I tried when I was there as chairman on 2 occasions. I was chairman of BPL for almost 10 years, 87 to 91, and then from 2012 to 2016, just before the election, to try to get some things done. We have allowed BPL, really, in my opinion, BPL and Batelco and the Water and Sewage Corporation has been the ones who pretty much bankrupt the Bahamian people. I believe it with all my heart. They have bankrupt us because of their overzealous demand for more pay for less production. We had 2 studies done when I was at BPL. On both studies, a Canadian company and a German company indicated that the productivity level of BPL with both companies, with the staff, was less than 40%.
Yeah, Leslie, you're speaking the language and making the point of the people in Grand Bahama. We've been operating very well on our own, and you speak to the number of issues that you applaud in terms of the energy process in Grand Bahama. Why change the process? Why change it?
I think
and that is the concern of a lot of people. If it's not broken, why try to fix it? And we know, I mean, it's not only about this government, but previous political administration. We know what happens when they try to fix things.
I don't think the government's going to get intimately involved in the running of the Freeport Power Company. It's just coming under the ambit of OICA. And OICA job is, like I said before, to see to it that whatever takes place, whatever decisions are made, would benefit the consumer who pays a hell of a lot of money for electricity. You look at Florida and look at the Bahamas. We're paying as much as 3 times higher than Florida. It is not fair. And it's because of the burden that the Bahamian people bears with the cost of not running BPL, you know. The Bahamian people has put in over $160 million in BPL's pension fund without the employees putting one damn dime, not a dime. That has to change. The government has to have the guts and stand to the plate and say, enough is enough. And that's, I think you're going to see some changes with this new company that is coming in. And we've really been put in a hell of a situation by all those entities, BPL, BTC. There's some problems they have in there. You see what has happened when we sold BPL, the telecommunication company.
Patelco.
The company that bought Patelco
BBC.
has already sold Patelco, has already made over $1 billion.
Yeah.
It is totally unfair that people now got to suffer those losses. Water and sewage is a sinking ship. Again, you see what is happening right now with the situation. You got people in court for misuse of funds and what have you. It's just a situation that this government, Mr. Davis, just have to step to the plate and do the right thing on behalf of the Bahamian people. I trust that the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the people of Freeport would just try to work this situation out to the best advantage of all concerned. My concern is the Bahamian people, not the companies.
Well, let's just hope this is just not another job by the government at the Port Authority, and hopefully this would not create any kind of problem in stifling.
I don't think so.
Stifling
I believe that.
or attempt to revitalize the economy. Let me read a statement from the Port Authority regarding this general situation. The Grand Bahama Port Authority is aware of concerns raised among all stakeholders by the very unfortunate public noise which has recently been directed at the GBPA. We would like to reassure all licensees, the residents of Grand Bahama, and current and prospective investors that the GBPA has not been distracted by this. We remain keenly focused on delivering the $2+ billion investments currently being executed for the benefit of the Grand Bahama economy. And that is our main focus. That should be the focus of the government as well as everybody in Grand Bahama, the economy of Grand Bahama, because everybody knows since Dorian and of course the COVID and hurricanes before Dorian, Matthew in 2016, it's been really trying for the people of Grand Bahama. And we've had so many promises by the respective central governments regarding the hotel, regarding the airport. Of course, they look like the ship, cruise port is now coming on. We'll talk about that later in the show. But there needs to be a settling of the mind of Grand Bahamians in terms of the forward movements with the economy. And we've been very comfortable up to this point. And, you know, there's just skepticism that when government gets involved with something, you know, it's an issue. The licensees have been upset about all this back and forth with the government, but we really, the people of Grand Bahama are resilient. And give the devil its due. The Port Authority is a vehicle that is necessary for Grand Bahama. I think it's, if not the Port Authority, that particular vehicle. If not them, if they sell to somebody else, but there's a necessity for an independent authority to be in Grand Bahama, I think, do what has been.
What makes Freeport different from Abaco, different from Eleuthera, different from any other island in this country, including the island of New Providence?
The Hawksbill Creek Agreement
but you know, we have given the government of the Bahamas, while I was there in my capacity as Minister of Trade and Industry and Agriculture for 5 years, many aspects of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, that Hawksbill Creek Agreement, came to an end. And in every instance, the Free National Movement under Mr. Ingram, the PLP under Mr. Christie, gave them a break and say because of the economic conditions in Freeport, the obligations that the Grand Bahama Port Authority was supposed to make, they felt was not up to scratch. And we had a lot of complaints too from the residents and the business community in Freeport, with the Grand Bahama Port Authority having so much leverage with the licensees. And we had many complaints about it, but I just think it is now time. It just bothers me that really the man who had the heart and soul of Grand Bahama, Sir Edwards and George, the late Sir Edwards and George, is not around today. That's why it's imperative that the governor of the Bahamas, the current governor, the Davis administration, and the Grand Bahama Port Authority, the owners, not the lawyers, need to sit in a room, work out a pathway for Grand Bahama to Freeport, to get back to the glory days of Freeport, to make that economy run the way it used to run. The infrastructure is as good as any infrastructure in any city in the United States on the Eastern Seaboard. The location is prime. I worked really closely with Edison George and the Port Authority when we formed the Bahamas Development Corporation back in 1974 for the sole purpose of bringing industry and investment to entire the Bahamas, but especially in Grand Bahama, because they had the infrastructure to facilitate those industries. The government and the Grand Bahama Port Authority has an obligation to the Bahamian people and to themselves to work this matter out in a harmonious manner that was going to benefit the stakeholders in Grand Bahama as well as the Bahamian people. And that needs to take place, and I trust at the end of this protracted situation that is going on now, that it ends well, and that what obligations were under the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, when we signed that agreement in the 60s, that had come to fruition in the 50s, really, to enable the Bahamian people to get the benefits that is due them under that Hawksbill Creek Agreement.
Leslie, you understand the situation very well, better than most, especially as it comes to energy and trade and industry. But I just want to refute one thing you said. You speak about the government's giving the Port Authority a break. I'd rather say they didn't want to rock the boat, because as you know, the government is responsible, totally responsible, for the major part of Grand Bahama, the West Grand Bahama, and East Grand Bahama, all of the infrastructure and everything. So, but the Port Authority through the years have helped the governments, the various governments, tremendously. I can tell you about a recent situation when water was was made available for the people in East End.
Okay.
The Port Authority was responsible for the dredging and the piping and assisting the government with that particular process. So really the governments have been working hand in hand. And in the past, other governments have recognized that. And they said, let's not rock the boat.
Yes.
Let's work with the GBPA. And it just seems now that this present government doesn't seem to be that interested in working with the Port Authority, more so being aggressive and trying to sort of push the Port Authority on the side. That's the way it appears.
No, I don't
That's the way it appears.
I don't think that way for 1 second. Mr. Davis is not that type of leader to want to, he lived in Grand Bahama, he's fully aware of what takes place in Grand Bahama. And he doesn't have that temperament to try to push the Port Authority in any direction. But I think what he wants is what is due to the Bahamian people under the auspices of the Hawksbill Creek Agreement is finalized, is rectified. Remember now, a study was done a few years ago that cost the Bahamian people, I guess, almost $1 million. And the study indicated, an independent study by one of the world's leading researchers in economic development, indicated the amount of money that the Bahamas government was responsible for putting in over the years that was due to the government. The government, as I understand it, have a 7.5% stake in the Port Authority. I just think, again, these meetings need to be held with the Prime Minister himself, a team that he would put together in conjunction with a team put together by the Port Authority. Forget the lawyers. Come to some agreement among yourselves first. And again, I say it's a pity that Sir Edward is not here. Someone has to step to the plate with his ingenuity and his wherewithal. That's probably lacking in Freeport at the present time. His daughters, I think, do a wonderful job, and so is the other partners. But this stalemate must end to enable the government to carry on its function, and also to see to it that the amount of funds due to the government of Bahamas is settled to enable the government to pay its staff and to defray the costs that they would have accumulated over the years in assisting the Port Authority in taking care of the Bahamian people that live there. I just think it's a situation that both parties need to sit down and work out to the best interest of the Bahamian people.
Yeah, there's full agreement in that, Leslie. The people of Grand Bahama really would like this impasse to end.
Now, the Grand Bahama Port Authority got to like it, because they're the ones who control the
people,
destiny of the Bahamian people who reside in Freeport, Grand Bahama.
When I say the people of Grand Bahama, I mean including the Port Authority, because that's a part of Grand Bahama. Let me just read another portion of the statement by the Port Authority. because I think the people need to be assured in this instance that, we're going to be all right. They need to be assured.
I don't think they need to fear the Davis administration at all.
Yeah, believe me, the people of Grand Bahama can rest assured that we will bring these projects to fruition. Each day, we dedicate ourselves to advancing these initiatives, and we eagerly anticipate sharing news of further exciting developments. We encourage our stakeholders to maintain confidence and remember the resilience we've demonstrated together throughout the years. Despite the current challenges, Freeport continues to offer a wonderful environment for living and investing, reflecting on our enduring belief in the island's potential and prosperity. And one of the projects is the Grand Bahama Shipyard's $600 million transformation.
Yes.
I think that's very important.
But that's really for their benefit, eh? You make an investment based on what you can accrue in the future as far as profitability. Them expanding their services in Grand Bahama. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But they're doing it because the Eastern Seaboard is there, South Central America, the Caribbean is there. It's going to feed off the plant that they're putting up.
But Leslie, you
Bahamians
can't discount the spillover.
No, you can't.
Exactly,
No, no.
spillover.
The spillover,
Exactly. Bahamians
benefit
being in,
the Bahamian people.
And
I say on behalf of the government, we are proud that that is taking place. And I'm sure the government would give them whatever assistance is necessary in conjunction with the Port Authority to make that a successful entity because it benefits all. But at what cost? Let me give you an example. The government of Bahamas right now, I think gets maybe $5 on every container that goes into to the shipyard in Grand Bahama. What is happening in other countries around the world that has similar shipyards like the Bahamas? All of these things need to be considered to what benefits is going to accrue to our people in the end, what is going into the Treasury to assist the government in defraying its costs to run this place called the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And again, I said, I've been saying it from I was a minister, the government needs to put a high-powered team together that understand these investments, that understand people coming here, investing their hard-earned money to make money, because nobody comes to your country because they love you. There's no love in no corporate entity that they come to the Bahamas for love and to give us any benefits. They came here to make money, and that port has been making a hell of a lot of money. I would wish to see an uptick in the amount of money that the Bahamian people get from all the containers that ply on those ships coming from around the world to Freeport, that the Treasury would benefit more and make the Bahamian people's lives a little better, especially the ones in Freeport, Grand Bahama, and of course all of Grand Bahama. This whole thing needs to be settled in an amicable way with men and women sitting around the table, reaching a conclusion that we are on the same page. We have one country called the Bahamas. We cannot have two countries, one called the Freeport, the Port Authority, within a country. This is not the Vatican. This is not Morocco. This is the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. That discussion needs to take place.
Leslie, there's a twofold perspective in all investments, and I agree with you. An investor wants to make money. He wants to return on the funds he's invested.
Much as he
But
can.
on the other side, there's the spillover. There's the economy.
There's
There's the
spillover.
employment. There's the employment
Yes.
with the many families
Yes.
that make it and are able to send their children to school
course.
and do a whole lot of other things
Yes.
because of the funds that are coming in through
Yes.
salaries. So that's always, and then it increases, it enhances the whole vibrancy of a particular area
But that's
financially.
happened anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
with
so
a company making an investment.
so we
It's like
don't
the
want to
hotel sector.
want to detract
No, you're not
from,
gonna,
from
you're
the
not-
presence of.
No, you're not. You want to encourage them
Yes, yeah.
to expand, but at the same time, you want to know that the Bahamian people too are going to get accrue some benefits from that expansion that's going to go and help the people of the Bahamas to live a better life, to have the cost of living cut down. For example, the ships that they bring, or all of the goods that they bring out of from China and the East and elsewhere. It is important that the Grand Bahama Port Authority get some investment out of China to have a free trade zone in Grand Bahama. Someone has to take that initiative to make that happen, because Freeport, our vision of Freeport from 1974 was that Freeport would be the hub for all goods and services plying between the East and the West. And I would wish to see that happen in my lifetime, that you have a port there with the Chinese and other Bahamian investors being in charge of it, that we can accrue and transfer the mindset of Grand Bahamians that, in fact, all of the products heading to this part of the world, Freeport could be the hub for most of the goods that is going into this in the Western Hemisphere. I'd like to see that happen. Again, you got to put a team together that's going to go there, package it, and go and promote it and make it happen. That's why you need harmony between the government and the Port Authority, with each partner getting as much benefits as they can. One is a company. They look for shareholders. The other happens to be a government that has the people to look after, not the shareholders to look after. And in my mind, the people are always more important to me than the shareholders of a company, because we represent, those in Parliament represent people that put them in Parliament to work for and on their behalf. The people who run a company are put there by the shareholders or the owners to work for and on their behalf, and their motive is profit, 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 which is fine. I just want some of that profit to stay in our country and assist the Bahamian people. That's all.
Well, let's be reasonable here. You know, with a $600 million
Big
investment,
yes,
you figure 10% of that will benefit the country?
benefit us tremendously. But
All right, so that's $60 million.
fine.
So Grand Bahama could use that at this particular point in time, especially as we're trying to revitalize the economy. But let's talk a little bit more about the port, the shipyard and the other areas of the industrial center. When you were Minister of Trade and Industry, I saw you come into Grand Bahama on a number of occasions, and you network in that area, and you know a whole lot about trade and industry. What is your take on what has been happening with the industrial center in Grand Bahama? What would you like to see happen?
It bothers me as a former minister that companies like Syntex is gone, Franklin Chemical is gone. Just a few months ago, that company is gone.
Pharmachem, yeah.
Leaving a void of all those Bahamians being unemployed. But more than that, those buildings are now unoccupied. The Grand Bahama Port Authority and the government again needs to put a team together to go and attract investments. The Grand Bahama just happen to have all the infrastructure that is necessary to accommodate any type of investment that's going to feed the eastern seaboard of the United States, the Caribbean, South and Central America. Grand Bahama is an ideal place. And that's why I say again, the two parties must sit and put a team together that has the foresight, the initiative, and the damn brain power to make it happen. Grand Bahama right now is in tatters. When I go to Grand Bahama and I see all the poverty, I see all those buildings that are closed, it hurts my heart. When I was the Magic City. And we have to get back to that. People got to return to Grand Bahama, not leaving Grand Bahama. A lot of Grand Bahamians now coming to New Providence, they're in Eleuthera, they're in Abaco, they're in Bimini. It's going to take a Herculean effort by both parties to give and take. And I believe Mr. Davis has the wherewithal. I think he has the concern of the people as well, as a concern for the Grand Bahama Authority to get it right. So we need to get over this hurdle, over this impasse that they're in now, and sit as sensible men and women. Say, listen, this is where we are, this is where we were, this is where we need to get back to. The only competition that Grand Bahama had in the 60s and 70s was Puerto Rico. You know, most of the pharmaceutical entities were residing in Puerto Rico, and we were able to lure those industries to Grand Bahama. That's when you had a futuristic team under the auspices of Sir Edward St. George and the other families to get it right. We have to get back to that point. And the government work hand in hand with the Grand Bahama Port Authority. I don't know why the hotel in Grand Bahama isn't sold yet. You make these statements, these premature statements, that we got a deal. The people want to see it happen. And they have a right to expect that this government would make that happen before the next election if you're going to sell the hotel. You know, I thought that the former government of F&M made a hell of a mistake in paying all that money for that entity that was sold too by the same shipyard owners at a price I thought was excessive. But the Bahamian people now is footing the bill for paying the staff and paying for the upkeep of the hotel. The sooner we get rid of that hotel and send it to a private entity, the better off we're going to be as a people. That needs to happen.
Leslie, one of the reasons the pot cake resonates across this land is because you're a straight shooter. And you talk about making these statements that just don't make a lot of sense. For instance, the hotel was to be sold for $100 million.
That ain't gonna happen.
You bought the hotel for
That ain't-
65.
that ain't gonna happen.
It has gone through a process for some 5 years of deterioration.
That ain't gonna happen.
How in this world is going to be
Because
now?
some of these people
So-
live in la la land. They don't have the experience.
Exactly.
Most of them put people on these boards that's from one sector, insurance. They got no damn idea of industrial development, except one sector. So I blame the government for allowing these things to happen, putting the wrong people in places that are so important and so paramount to the development of our country. I blame them for it. And I say it over and over. Get yourself together or you may be gone.
Leslie, we're going to go to a break soon, but one of the things I want to emphasize, we're going to talk when we come back from the break, is your one bone of contention is the government working together with the Port Authority.
And the Port Authority working together with the government.
Exactly. And that's what the people of Guatemala would like to see happening. But this impasse that is going on, hopefully we can...
It has to stop.
Hopefully that can stop. We'll take this break and we'll be back on Grand Bahama Today. I'm your host, Fred Stirrup, and my guest is Leslie the Pot Cake Miller.